Hello everybody, and thank you for joining this webinar. We are just going to give everyone just another minute to join and then we will get started. Thank you. Okay, what we'll do, we'll get started. So thank you everybody for joining. And welcome to today's webinar. Can you just go to the next slide, please?
You got control, Daniel.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Okay, so we're here and we are live. So thank you everybody for joining. So just a quick run through. I'm sure many of our partners have heard my voice a lot the last few weeks. So I posted quite a few webinars. So I've done some great sessions on mobile, and today's webinar is focused on hardware. So my name's Daniel. I'm the mobile and hardware marketing manager. And we're very, very excited and proud to be joined today by one of our, or two people from our hardware partner, Data Select. We've got Darren and Marios, who will be talking you through the Samsung Knox portfolio, which is a product and a service and an offering that we get asked about a lot. And it is something that's created a lot of engagement at previous sessions, so we're really excited to have two experts today to talk you through the service. But just before I do that, I'm just going to sort of paint a picture a little bit as to where we are today. You know, as with all of our webinars, we have a broad mix of partners that attend them. You know, we're very fortunate. We have partners that sell multiple products across different businesses, different types of businesses. So, you know, we've got partners selling connectivity, mobile, voice, but today's sort of product offering fits into our product supply area. So it may be an area of the business that some of our partners might not be familiar with. So it's traditionally came from our distribution channel, where we've been selling hardware for many years, in particular smartphones and tablet devices. So, you know, we work with partners to sell all the major brands. You know, it's based from the demand from the end customer as the type of product and brand that suits them. But we're not exclusive to any manufacturer or brand. You know, we work with all of them, and we're keen to support our partners to get the right hardware for the right solution. And what we've kind of seen over the last, you know, from this year and going into, and from last year and this year and going forward, just a few trends really. So rugged devices has been a big push from last year. So hopefully many of you have joined some of our co-hosted sessions in regards to devices for rugged market, which is growing and growing. Desktop experience as well. So today's webinar is obviously focused on Samsung Knox, but Samsung also offer a ecosystem of, you know, products that can link up to your desktop experience as well. You know, so we're seeing a big sort of push for that as well. So, you know, you're having one experience rather than having a smartphone experience and then a desktop experience. 5G, of course. So 5G launched officially in the UK last year, and we're seeing a rapid expansion of the cities and towns, and also to go with that, the actual handsets that can be powered by 5G. So the number of handsets available is growing, and we're seeing the demand growing. As an example, I was working with a partner yesterday on some co-branded assets for 5G, and he wanted to put Stoke-on-Trent on this co-branded asset. And I thought straight away, there's no way there's 5G in Stoke-on-Trent, but I checked it and there was. So, you know, we're seeing the network for 5G growing, and we're seeing the devices grow. So that's really exciting. And the last one there, MDM. So mobile device management, which is why we're here today. So many of our partners will know, obviously, that we work with our network suppliers who offer a network level solution. So Vodafone, O2, and EE. But there's also, we have a hardware level solution as well, which, as I mentioned before, it's something that is always created interest from our partners and engagement. It can be, in some levels, it can be quite a technical product to announce and to potentially sell on, but which is why we're really proud today to bring in two experts to talk you through it. And then we believe it's an amazing solution, especially now with what's, you know, we've got a lot more, your end customers might be working from home a lot more, and I appreciate we're coming, you know, fortunately we're looking to come out of the current situation we're in, and staff may be encouraged to go back to their offices soon, but you may see a lot more of a hybrid workforce where you have people still working from home. So having their devices secured is really, really important. So what we want to essentially cover today in a nutshell is how the Samsung Knox portfolio helps your customers to configure, enroll, manage, and secure their devices. So I am going to bring in Darren and Marios from Data Select to talk you through how you can do this.
Thank you, Daniel. Hello, this is Marios Katisti. I'm the head of mobile solutions at Data Select. As Daniel has said, what we're going to be doing today is just giving you an overview of the Samsung Knox portfolio. So this is a portfolio of solutions which allows you to configure and manage your Samsung devices, and even manage the ongoing OS upgrades on the device. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dan Rawlinson, who's the mobile solutions manager at Data Select in a moment. And what he's going to be doing is running through that portfolio and what it can provide for you. And then we're going to look at seeing how that works with something called Android Enterprise, and then to give you some overview of some case studies of where these where this has been deployed. So it gives you a bit of an understanding about how this can work for you and how it can work for your customers. But for now, I'd like to hand over to Darren. So Darren, if you can please proceed.
Morning, Marios. Thank you for that. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking your time out, your no doubt busy times and schedules to have a look around Samsung Knox with us this morning. Hopefully I'll keep this as interesting and as only technical where it really needs to be, because I think that's the best way to be about things. So what is it about Samsung Knox? Well, Knox, to sum it up, is basically making an Android device enhanced. It's taking Samsung devices and giving them a unique position in the market of ultimately delivering what they like to call defense-grade security. Now, that happens in lots of different ways, and the first thing to mention really is that all Android devices, irrespective of who they are what's known as Android Enterprise capable. Even if you take a device as a consumer from a retailer, that device potentially could be enrolled and managed into an MDM, a mobile device management platform of any given choice. Samsung basically takes that which already exists from Android and then enhances it with options in the cloud with some solutions, which we'll come to shortly. But Knox is also a physical thing. We get many customers and many resellers and partners say to us, my customer wants Samsung Knox. And when we say, well, that's great, what part of it? That's quite sort of a news for them. They didn't realize it's more than just one thing. Knox initially is actually at the chipset level. It's a physical thing in every Samsung phone that you could possibly take. So this graph here, just to show you initially, we talk about the hardware root of trust and the build of trust. So for example, when a device is manufactured by Samsung, when the chipset is placed into the device, you can see on the left-hand side there from their factory over in Korea, the actual casing of that chipset is immediately discarded and shredded. So each chip is absolutely unique and individual to that device. The key thing where that matters is that when you switch a device on each time for the first time and the next time thereafter, the hardware checks the software and the software checks the hardware. This is to ensure the device is okay, it's not being compromised anywhere. So if your device gets hacked or rooted, that's the first thing that gets changed or messed about with. So this way, you've always got what we call this boot of trust through this boot zone, where the hardware's checking the software checks hardware, and they both say to you, yep, you are who you should be, you've not been compromised in any way, you can carry on. If it has been compromised, then it will actually lock that encrypted container down. Knox is about encryption from the outset, but Knox is also about encryption in the device more than that. Any Android device is encrypted when it's at rest, when it's switched off. But of course, when you switch it on and you start to use the data, it becomes unencrypted. With Samsung, we start to move into a greater layer of security, and this is the really secure by Knox part. The data within the device can remain to be encrypted even after the device has been powered on, and that's predominantly through a thing called Knox Platform for Enterprise, which I'll come to a bit later. That basically splits the phone into two and gives you like a work and a personal, if you like. But Knox is much more than that. So what we also have here is just to enhance what I've just mentioned. Android Enterprise, a device is encrypted while it's switched off. You switch it on, it becomes decrypted, so you can start to use it, and that's fine. But within Secure by Knox, as I mentioned already, the rest of the phone, the normal half of the phone, if you like, becomes decrypted, but the important work data remains encrypted in that contained area. It used to be known as Knox Workspace, it's now known as Knox Platform for Enterprise. And that ensures that data remains protected at all times whilst you're using it, and also if you're outside that area. It's that defense-grade security which has helped Samsung devices become the device of choice with emergency services networks, for example, with all the blue light services in the UK and so on. But the good news is that might sound a little bit technical to begin with, but Samsung does a lot more interesting stuff, a lot more simple, interesting ways. I'm going to go on to that now. So there's actually a whole value chain around Samsung. And a bit of PDF struggling a little bit, so just give me 1 second. Daniel, would you probably like to take control at this point and maybe go through the slides at your end? That might be easier.
Yes, I can do that, no problem. Let me just bring them up. Apologies, everyone, for the slight problem. I'll just be 1 second.
Whilst you do that, Daniel, I'll probably just explain to everybody that what we're going to look now is actually the value chain of Samsung Knox solutions. So as I mentioned earlier on, there are some cloud solutions which work alongside the chipset, which we've got. If you just move on a couple of slides for us, please, Daniel, that'd be fabulous. There we go, that's the one where we need to be. Thank you, Daniel. So what we've got here is showing that value chain. I've already mentioned that on the device platform, the device itself, we're already secured using the Knox chipset on the device level. But beyond that, we also now have some cloud-based solutions. This helps us to manage the device, secure the device, and also customize and control and deploy the device, as already been mentioned. So what I'm going to touch on now are the first two steps of that, and that's the thing called Knox Configure and Knox Mobile Enrollment. So on the next slide, we're going to show you what Knox Configure is all about. Knox Configure, thankfully, does what it says on the tin. This will configure the device for you in such a way, and this is unique to Samsung from any device and other manufacturers out there, in such a way that the device, when it arrives in the user's hands, can be the device that our customer wants it to be. So we can send applications to it. Okay, that might not sound particularly interesting, but we can send an application and place it on the device where we want it to be. So if we want this app to be in the top right-hand corner of the home screen or the bottom left-hand corner of the next screen along, we can place it there. Using Knox Configure, we can place documentation onto a device. It could be a PDF, a how to use your phone guide, welcome to your phone, whatever it might be. Again, onto the device where we want it to be, right in the middle of the screen, no issues. We can change the home screen, the lock screen, even the boot up animation can be your customer's logo. Except for the physical nature of the device itself, Everything else around the device can be customized. Moreover, though, it's cutting deployment time down. If you're an IT administrator and you've got even a dozen or even hundreds of phones, it's particularly time consuming to be forever attaching devices to a laptop, booting them up, changing the configuration and reboxing the device. This means you can do this not only over the air and never need to see a device physically at all for yourself, but it also means that the device can be put in a way that is unique to Samsung, customized in such a way that it becomes purposed and repurposed as a Samsung device to how it wants to be for the customer. It means also that things such as support calls are reduced, because if we know that the app on the device is in the top right hand corner, we can guide somebody to that if they were to ring in and say, I've got lost on the device. There are also some light MDM features such as security and being able to manipulate what the device can or cannot do in the user's hands from the off using Knox Configure. So this is a great staging tool for sure, but it's a very, very unique customization tool. On the next slide though, I'm going to now talk about a thing called Knox Mobile Enrollment. Now, Knox Mobile Enrollment is actually a free of charge service. Some of you may have heard of a thing called Apple DEP. This is basically Samsung's equivalent. There's no licensing required here. All of the services, including this one, by the way, are at samsungknox.com for your customer to go to and register there, and then you can access them there. Knox Mobile Enrollment doesn't require a license, as I've said, and basically does one thing. It allows a Samsung device to be enrolled into a given MDM, whatever that MDM may be. Your customer creates a fairly simple profile within that portal. The IMEIs of the devices are uploaded typically by the distributor device, such as ourselves here, on your and your customer's behalf, against their unique identifying code they would receive from Samsung. And basically, as you can see from the screen here, it skips out an awful lot of the usual process you would normally have if the device is in your hand. So when the device is turned on for the first time, simply enter the Wi-Fi. Samsung recognizes the device when it calls home to Samsung. It recognizes the IMEI and starts to push down that Knox Mobile Enrollment profile and instructs the device to head towards the MDM that you've chosen. The individual user cannot interrupt that process, and as the graphic shows there at the bottom, the device after a few moments simply arrives on the MDM of choice. That's it, job done. Again, the IT administrator never needs to see a phone physically. It could quite literally be dispatched anywhere in the world, and the user just turns on and follows the first couple of steps, and that's it. So that's nice and simple. You see this reference there to EMM. A lot of people like to use EMM rather than MDM. It's the same thing. I think most of us prefer the word MDM, mobile device management, but EMM is the same thing as well. All right. By the way, this is available on all Samsung devices from quite a few iterations of Android previous, from Android 5, and that's a good 4 or 5 years ago now. So you can be pretty safe and secure in the knowledge that you can use this Knox Mobile Enrollment service with pretty much any Samsung tablet or phone that you might need to enroll into the service. And by the way, it could even be just a Wi-Fi only tablet. That's still not a problem. You can still use this to enroll that device into the MDM. So that's Knox Mobile Enrollment, and that's Knox Configure. And just to summarize that, that's initially how we're going to look at customizing and controlling our device. So on the next slide, we're going to now work through what we can do to manage a device. And what I'm now going to talk about are the next two components, which are again individual licenses you can look at for you and your customers, which is Knox Manage and Knox ePhoto. So Knox Manage, which we've got a summary for on the next slide, is basically Samsung's own mobile device management platform. This is their equivalent to all those MDMs you might have in your mind right now. This is equivalent to any of the best-in-class MDMs that are out there. The key thing about this to remember is, like any other MDM, Samsung Knox Manage is actually an agnostic product. We can put other Android devices into this solution. We can put other Apple devices into this solution. This is a completely agnostic, easy to use, mixed fleet opportunity equivalent mobile device management platform to any of that's out there, but provided and powered by Samsung. And of course, being a Samsung product, therefore it means that when it comes to the management of Samsung devices themselves, it will give you that very, very deep granular opportunity to manage that device. But it will do all the usual things you'd expect to be able to do as an MDM. We can find a phone, we can lock it, we can wipe it, whatever it might need be to do that. But it has in itself some nice little USPs, and two of those I'd like to mention out briefly. Event-based policies, as listed there, are actually policies which you can say, I want this device to behave one way, in a certain time of day, but behave another way for me, maybe in the evening. I might want to lock the device down so the user can't use it while they're at home, and vice versa when they start working the next day. Or an event-based policy could be based on the geography of the device. This device has gone abroad, lock it down so we can't get any big data bills, something like that. Also, there's a multi-app kiosk wizard. Sounds a bit of a combination, but that's actually a really nice simple tool in the system where you can drag and drop applications and clock and the logo, whatever it might be for the company, onto a format of a device and simply deploy it out to other devices. So the devices are locked down to just those applications and exactly where we want them to be on the device. Many other MDMs out there, to do a kiosk mode requires coding and JavaScript knowledge and things like that. This is a wonderful studio in the system that simply allows you to drag and drop icons where you want them to be and push it out. Excellent. As I've already mentioned, it is fully supported within Apple devices and other Android devices as well, hence why we give reference there to Android Enterprise. And lastly, we have 0-day touch points for Samsung. So if any feature sets within the Samsung OS or on a device becomes available, Knox Manage has the ability to control that from the very, very next day. So that's Knox Manage as an MDM. Lastly, I'm now going to refer to a product which is called ePhoto. So sorry for the acronym. ePhoto means Enterprise Firmware Over the Air. What that does is allows us to control the phone's actual OS upgrades. All the mobile phones you've got right by you right now, what's known as a photo server. That means firmware over the air. That's how our phones receive updates from the networks, from the manufacturers, and from Android, Google, and so on. Basically, ePhoto from Samsung, again, this is unique to Samsung as a product, takes your phone off the grid, if you like, and allows us to manage those photo updates for ourselves. So it might be we don't want the updates of software of a device to occur because it might be we've got a third-party app running on the device, and we know it tends to fall over if an update happens on the device all of a sudden. To give you a brief example of that, we had a retailer whose staff have got tablets they use in store, and of course they don't want those updates happening on the Boxing Day sales, so they just blocked it out, and using ePhoto, they will decide when those updates occur and how they occur. So we can say, for example, we want the update to Android 11 maybe to take place on Sunday at 9 p.m. if they've only got Wi-Fi and if they've only got so much battery left in the device to do so. And we can get a report back to say these devices have been successful and these other devices have failed, and then we can follow that along. This becomes really important to businesses, particularly in that retail environment or other environments, particularly where there are third-party apps which could cause a problem for a business and cause continuity issues, customer-facing issues, if a device starts to get an issue, if an update occurs without their knowledge or their prior requirement to do so. So again, this is giving a very much a device insurance policy, if you like, around preventing any unwanted updates happening when you don't want them to do. Equally, of course, is ensuring the devices are kept up to date, because many users may choose to ignore the updates. And I'm sure there's plenty of you on this call at the moment that are thinking, yeah, I tend to say later when they get an update, rather than accepting that security pack, which might be important on the device. This also ensures devices are kept up to date, and therefore IT management can be safe in the knowledge that devices are where they should be and are running to that the best degree possible. So that's ePhoto. So again, just to summarize now on the next slide, this is that value chain we have around Samsung solutions. So we can manage devices, we can configure devices, we can enroll devices into a chosen MDM, and that could be Knox Manage, of course, or any other, and we can secure the actual over-the-air updates. Another thing to add on at this point very quickly is what I mentioned earlier on about having a secure folder. That's a thing called Knox Platform for Enterprise. Some of you have had some experience potentially with Knox before, might have heard of a thing called Knox Workspace. That's what that is, and that probably sums up a little bit better, but they now call it Knox Platform for Enterprise, or KPE for short. That is that secure folder area which can give you that separate encrypted area within a device. Please note that all of these solutions I've mentioned are individually available, or of course are interchangeable between each other. Many customers might use Knox Configure to set up the device and manage it with Knox Manage, and then of course continue that management with ePhoto. ePhoto in itself is a singularly available license and can be used through any of the MDMs that are out there, for example. Or you may choose to configure a device and just use Knox Manage. The choice is entirely the customer, but we can help you to understand those combinations and correlations of that as we go on. That collaboration of these solutions also means collaboration within your businesses as well. For your customers, you might find that certain aspects of these solutions have a benefit to certain elements within their own business. This means that the mobile device is becoming more important to business now than ever, and it means that we're helping them to make that device deliver more for their business. That's good for you, and it's good for your customer. So just moving on now, we've also got an opportunity around Knox and some of the licensing. And Maros, I'm just going to ask you probably just to chip in at this point, because I understand that we've got something to tell people around the Knox suite here.
Yeah, so thank you, Dan. So as you can see, there's a column of different SKUs or stock codes there, ones which Dan has then gone through. So you have the, let me just move my screen over a little bit. So you then have the example of the Knox suite. You have basically Knox platform for enterprise, which Dan talked about, which is the we talked about the security down to the chipset. You have the enrollment logic. You also have Knox Manage, which is the MDM, and then you also have the ePhoto, which is the controlling the OS upgrades over the air. But what Samsung have decided to do is actually create something called Knox Suite. Now, Knox Suite is basically those 3 SKUs that you can ordinarily buy on their own and include it in one suite. So that means that the MDM, which is the Manage, the ePhoto, and the Knox platform for enterprise is all included in that Knox suite as one SKU. So you can buy that as one SKU should you wish, and there's like supported pricing on that basis. The Knox mobile enrollment piece is included as part of the overall process of enrollment, and Samsung don't charge for that privilege. So Knox Suite is going to come as a bundle. But what's also being launched at the beginning of July is like the second version of Samsung's Enterprise Edition devices. So what they do with those products, and I believe there's going to be probably another webinar on this subject, is that these devices have been put together intended for the enterprise customer. And what that means is you can get services such as advanced replacement on those Samsung devices. You also then get a guaranteed security and OS upgrades on those devices for a period of up to 3 years. Okay. Now, as part of that kind of physical day-to-day process service that's available as part of Enterprise Edition, from the 1st of July, Knox Suite will be available as a free reclaim license if you buy an Enterprise Edition device. So 1st of July, buy an Enterprise Edition device, you can get Knox Suite free of charge for 1 year, and that includes Knox Platform for Enterprise, Knox Manage, and ePhoto. Okay, so now all licensing and deployments will depend on how devices are set up, how your employees are profiled. And what's really important here is something called Android Enterprise. Okay, now Darren is now going to give you an overview, a quick overview of what Android Enterprise is, how that's relevant here, and also then to see how Knox has been deployed with a number of case studies using Android Enterprise. And this would be anything from where staff have actually bought in their own devices for use with company applications, right the way through to delivery drivers which are using devices specifically for one reason and are locked down specifically for that reason. Dan, can I then please hand back over to you, and you can go through a bit about Android Enterprise and those case studies.
Thanks, Maros. Yes, I will do. So what we're going to see on the next slide now, it's just a couple of case studies around it. So just to touch what Maros mentioned, and it sort of goes back to where we started at the beginning of the slide there. We talked about Android Enterprise, and let's be clear about this. Android Enterprise is about the operating system itself, which clearly Samsung devices run on. Any device can be put into what's called an Android Enterprise mode. And those modes typically are phrases you may be aware of, such as bring your own device. There's a thing called device owner work profile. These are considerations your customer gives to a device and how they wish it to be managed within an MDM. So as Maros has just said, what we've done is got a couple of case studies now. Bring the first one up in a second, which will show you how a device was deployed. So this is about using it within a mobile device management MDM situation. So this is using maybe Knox Manage, as this was in this case example. Again, just a brief touch. This was solicitors working at a charity, but the key thing here, of course, was that the devices had to be managed in such a way that only the thing relevant to them was used within that secure area, in the nature of what it was, but obviously the rest of the device could be used for any personal. So it was about using Knox Manage as the MDM, enrolled in such a way, what's known as BYOD, bring your own device, that says to the device, okay, this device here is actually the solicitor's own Samsung phone, but I'm going to enroll it into Knox Manage and deploy a work profile to it. And that little work profile is basically just a small container with the relevant applications to their job in that area. The rest of the phone is untouched, cannot be managed by the administrator, nor should it be, because they've brought their own device to this situation. But using Knox Manage, we can manage just that contained small area known as a work profile of that. So it's a very simple one. But then moving on to the next one, it becomes much wider. This is a really good situation where it was a utilities company out there doing field maintenance and such like, but this was 20 devices of a larger deployment. And the reason I mentioned this specific 20 was because they were corporately owned devices. So the business had given the user the device, but they were entirely enabled for the user to do what they wanted to do with it. But of course, that presents a challenge to the business, because they say, well, hang on a second, we've got business data all mixed up in the device, but we want to give the users, because we trust them, to not abuse their device. They'll use it, not abuse it. So that's fine, okay. So we've got that situation there. But also within certain devices, there is a requirement to actually restrict the policies down. So HR got involved and says, well, we don't mind the device being able to be pretty free and open, but there are certain things we really don't want them to do. We want to be able to mimic the policy we have on their laptops, on their PCs, so they can't browse gambling sites and things like that. So there's a freedom, but just a little bit of touch points on stuff they really wouldn't want people to be able to do on what was ultimately a work device. So again, using Knox Manage, we were able to provide control where they wanted it, such as blocking URLs to websites, but otherwise the device was very, very open and they could do what they wanted with it. And there's reference there to KME, Knox Mobile Enrollment, as I mentioned earlier on, there's the free service that just simply helps to deploy and enroll the device into Knox Manage as the MDM is required. So again, this is a case where they've adjusted the system to be fair to the employee and to trust them, but to deploy and deliver those bits of control that we wanted, which is great. On the next example, we've kind of got sort of more opposite view of that. This was a healthcare situation. This was very, very much locked down. This is actually was quite a recent situation in regard to the COVID-19 situation we're all having to live through at the moment. This was actually for one of the Nightingale hospitals, and I was involved in this project that you're looking at right now. So this was the fairly obvious one. This was about deploying tablets to the hospital to allow patients to be able to communicate with friends and family, indeed to be able to communicate via an app on the device with the staff that were there taking care of them. That was how they responded and got contact with them and so on. But it also ensured that they could be kept informed and indeed entertained. So the device was given in what's known as a work use only, a device owner method. So the device when presented has specific applications. Again, this is an Android enterprise methodology through Knox Manage. Only certain nominated apps are on the device. So it was WhatsApp for communicating with friends and family, Now TV, BBC News, BBC Sport, whatever it might be. So the device was a true communication internally for the NHS and for the patient, for friends and family externally, and also some features there to give content to the patients for themselves as well at the same time. And that was all again delivered. And by the way, in an environment where there was no IT support, obviously, these devices had to be deployed to a situation where only the relevant people were at the site, and therefore no IT support was on the ground to help out. These devices had to work and had to be delivered in a way that the user could pick it up and use it without any concern or consideration for how do I make use of this device. And using Knox Manage in a work use only scenario with Android Enterprise helped that to happen. I think we've just got one more brief example now where a device was locked down furthermore. Okay. This was an example of where a device was actually used in a retail stroke. It was actually a casino. It was, I think it was amusement arcades. and it was for using a device for assessment for legal requirements around those arcades and so on. So again, the device was very, very locked down. In fact, locked down to that kiosk mode that I mentioned earlier on with Knox Manage. So it's very much the device, when booted up, only had a handful of apps, just the phone, just the SMS, just a couple of applications, which allowed the user to do their job, which is visiting sites, evaluating the sites for financial obligations, legal obligations around gaming and gambling, whatever it might be, and completing forms within the applications, but only that. There was no ability for the user to deviate or divert off to another browsing site, another application, or anything like that. It was built to do a specific job. And again, that's Knox Manage in what's known as single app or kiosk mode. The abbreviation COSU means corporately owned single use within the Android enterprise methodology of enrolling device. And that's what was used here, again, in conjunction with Knox Manage. All right. I think that probably concludes the case studies there, Daniel.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much for that. You covered a lot of detail there in a relatively short space of time, and the information that has been gained from that is enlightening, and it shows what can be done. The case studies are brilliant as well, because it gives some real world scenarios there that I'm sure our partners will enjoy. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of I'm just going to talk the partners through where they will find this information going forward and who to speak to, and then we're going to go on to some questions. We've had some great questions come through, so just give me 1 second. I'm just going to switch over the presentation again. Okay, great. So as I said, there's a lot of information there. So the Knox portfolio has an amazing array of case studies, information that will be suitable for a multiple array of partners. So what we're going to do, we're going to take all this information and put it onto our hardware hub. Now, hopefully some of our partners on the webinar today will be familiar with this. So there's a section on our main website where we post articles, content, and reviews. So it's kind of is what it says on the tin, really. It's a hub of information and knowledge. So we'll be putting the Knox information on there. And if you want to talk about pricing, availability, and more information, we do obviously have our internal hardware teams. So if you're a traditional distribution partner, then you can go through to your usual sales support contact, who will be more than happy to help you. If you're a wholesale partner and you're not currently purchasing hardware from us, that's not a problem. Talk to your desk-based account manager, or you can email mobile support at digitalwholesale-solutions.com. So there's absolutely options there for both platforms for the partners. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we have had some questions come in, so we are going to just run through these now quickly.
Sure.
Okay, so on one of the slides you talked about how the Knox portfolio can work with non-Samsung devices. So I've had a question come in here. So how well does it work on the iOS platform? Does Apple put any restrictions?
Okay, so it works as well as any other MDM. We have to be cautious to note that Apple themselves provide quite a good deep set of management APIs to any MDM to allow their devices to be controlled, but there are some things they do or don't allow you to do. So for instance, some of the applications which are fixed in the device like iMessage and the dialer and things like that, you can't manipulate or change, but that's true of any MDM. So Knox Manage, which is that specific part that allows a more agnostic management of any device, I can assure has a very good deep feature set around iOS. So all these sort of day-to-day MDM features you would hope to have around locking it, wiping it, finding it, sending apps even and such like, and controlling features such as turning the camera on and off in certain geographic locations, things like that are all absolutely doable through Knox MDM compared to most of our MDMs as well. What I would make a quick point on that is that it's important to ensure that the Apple devices are what's known as DEP, Device Remote Program Enabled. That instructs the Apple devices to allow them to become managed by an MDM, whichever MDM that might be, and puts the device in what's called a supervisor mode. That's the mode we need to be able to take control of the device. With those few steps in mind, yes, Knox Manage can manage an Apple device pretty much as well as any other MDM out there allows Apple to do so.
I think it's important to add as well at this juncture that we do plenty of deployments where there's a mix of kit. There are probably quite a lot of scenarios still where the general staff will have Samsung devices and some of the board, for example, might have iPhones. So that means that obviously there needs to be a mix of deployments done for one customer. That's very common, and many of the solutions or deployments that we've been involved in has involved a mix of devices like that.
Okay, thanks, that's great.
Just to add very quickly, I've even got an NHS rollout at the moment using Knox Manage, and it's a 100% Apple estate, and yet they're using Knox Manage. So I can absolutely concur. If it's been okay for a customer like that, then yeah, rest assured it can do its job.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. And that actually leads on to another question here. At the stage of deployment, if the end customer is, say, mid-term with their airtime and then their linked handsets, how does the deployment differ if you're deploying to existing hardware to deploying to new hardware?
That's a great question. So you've got a couple of choices really. You could have an existing device and just leave it as it is, but enroll it and use the work profile I mentioned earlier on. So you're kind of treating the device as if it's as it currently would be, belonging to the individual, the end user. They've got complete control at the moment. And you could deploy just the work profile and manage at least the work content within that device. So at least you've got some semblance of control. Or you can do a factory reset on any device, and then that will take it back through that process of initiating it as if it was a whole new, fresh, new device, and go through Knox mobile enrollment if it's a Samsung device, etc., or other enrollment methodologies which exist to roll any other device onto the platform. And you start again, basically. We've recently had a quite a substantial utility company with in excess of 2,500 devices, none of which were managed at all initially. So they're currently undertaking a fairly lengthy project where each week a different group, different team of individuals are going through a process of backing their data up onto their own personal laptops, something like that, if they've got pictures and contacts, whatever, then factory resetting the device. The IMEI is known to the IT management, and using Knox mobile enrollment that you saw earlier on, that's allowing the device to be picked up over the air and then roll it fully into the MDM. So it becomes a fully managed device. So it's a little bit of a decision-making process for the customer, but there are options there. In some cases, they might decide it's just too difficult and too time-consuming, just use work profile. In other cases, no, we're going to take full control, we'll factory reset the devices, and then enroll them in the ways that we've already discussed.
Okay, brilliant. That's really good to know, because as you mentioned, the type of devices that the end customer have will probably vary. Some will be, in terms of their contracts, will be mid-term, and some will be starting from fresh. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of the licensing, what contract terms are we looking at?
Do you want me to answer that one, Dan?
Yeah, you go, Matt.
Yeah, so ordinarily, when you buy any of the licensing that's on there, thank you for bringing that up, they're bought in yearly terms. So for any of them, you could buy 1, 2, 3, 4 year terms, so that whether it would now be the suite or platform for enterprise on its own, or manage on its own, or ePhoto on its own. Managed tends to be the most common one that's sold because most customers just want to be able to do device management. What then happens is that when you, let's say, for example, you bought, a customer bought 50 licenses, for argument's sake, on the 1st of January, and they bought it for 2 years. What would then happen is that after, let's say, 6 months down the line, they want to add some more licenses to the existing instance. What would happen is that as long as you guys are made aware of the license key, you give us the license key details. That acts as the holy grail, as it were, because that covers everything. That covers everything about the deployment. What the customer can then do is effectively buy the licensing, so what's called a co-term license. So whatever those additional licenses that are added will be added to the existing licenses, and they would all expire at the same time. So if you start off with a 2-year license, added more licenses 6 months down the line, that would effectively mean you'd then be paying for 18 months worth for those new licenses. So it all expires at the same time.
Okay, that's brilliant. That's really good to know. So it's one license key for the whole account, and then each device will then have its own code. So
it's effectively per seat. So if you've got 50 devices, for example, you need 50 licenses, but the key applies to the whole instance.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay, you mentioned, and I mentioned at the very start, and I believe you did touch on it as well, that our network partners, of course, offer similar types of services. So you have Mobile Iron on EE and MAS 360 on O2 and Vodafone Secure Device Manager. How compatible and would you recommend Knox working alongside a network level product and solution?
That's a great question, because all of the ones you just mentioned, for example, have the ability to integrate Knox ePhoto to manage the OSs straight into their own platforms. So you can sell a Knox ePhoto license now and then deploy it through any of those MDMs you've mentioned, and more, by the way, out to devices to manage that. So that's fine. Knox Configure, of course, is a enrollment product, as is Knox Mobile Enrollment. And again, they will work hand in hand with any MDM to enroll a device into said MDMs that you've got. And indeed, the Knox platform for enterprise also will have, in most MDMs, and I think all the ones you mentioned as well, an option to, again, integrate that solution and deploy that solution through their MDMs as well. Some of you, if you've got those MDMs in existence with customers, may see a reference within those dashboards as Knox Workspace, which is why I deliberately mentioned it earlier on, because that was its previous name, formerly known as Knox Workspace. That's Knox Platform for Enterprise. So in some MDMs, they haven't changed that. So it still says enter your Knox Workspace license key here, kind of thing. So there are actually options to upsell against your existing MDM estates with customers with ePhoto and Knox Platform for Enterprise today. And there's opportunity to enhance what they can do with the device and enhance your opportunity to resell those licenses to those customers. And Knox Mobile Enrollment and Knox Configure as enrollment tools will work with any of the MDMs that are out there as well.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you very much for that. And regards ePhoto, you mentioned that it will manage the updates for the operating system for the device to make sure it's up to date and secure. Does it also manage the updates and security for the apps as well?
That's a great question. So the applications on Android devices, obviously that's a Samsung only solution, so we can talk about that. Apps are actually managed very, very well by the Google Play system itself. Within any of the Android phones, which some of you probably got hopefully alongside you right now, if you looked at your Google Play settings, you'll see this thing called Google Play Protect. Google Play Protect is working all the time for us in the background. It checks every app on your phone every day or so. So in fact, they're doing well in excess of 2 billion app checks per day, every day, on all the devices around the world. So it's not so much that ePhoto needs to do that for you, because that's protecting the operating system and the security patches of the device itself at that level. The Play side of it, the app side, is being managed through the actual Play Store itself. And this is further proven by the Gartner ratings, which are available if you have a look round. And recently, in the report, Android as a platform became was top. They have a grade of 1 to 3, 1 being the best, and they had a grading of 1 of 28, I think it was 27, 28 out of 33 possible analysis. And the App Store and the protection of applications through Google Play Protect was proven to be absolutely the best app store out of all the other OSs that are out there in terms of the way it looks after itself and protects it for you in the background all day, every day.
Okay, that's great. And just a follow up to that question then. So with Knox, can you disable access to certain types of apps, or disable access to the Play Store?
You've kind of got two choices there. When you enroll a device, and this is where Android Enterprise comes into its own, a business, if using the Android Enterprise methodology enrollment, actually has its own Google Play Store opportunity. So as a business, you actually create the Google Play Store on the device to only be the applications that you approve. So from the off, the only apps that are on the device and can ever be on the device are that which you've approved to be in the Google Play Store. So the Google Play Store on a device that you've enrolled into an MDM isn't the usual freely available one that we're all familiar with. It's one that only has within it apps that the IT administrator has approved from the outset. Equally though, if you try to take the other point of view, which you can do, and say, yeah, we'll have a fairly use it, don't abuse it open policy, then yes, retrospectively, using something like Knox Manage, you can block out applications. So if you've allowed people to have Netflix, for example, but then they've burned a load of data on it last month, you could simply go into there and remove Netflix and block it from being used on that device thereafter. So you've got a before and or after situation. Our recommendation usually though is for a customer to take these things into account initially and use the Managed Google Play, which is a free of charge service, as part of the MDM and decide what apps can be there from the outset.
Yeah, that scenario that you just painted there was actually a real world question that came to me from a partner back in November, I think it was. So the end customer wanted his team to have the ability to have that work-life balance, so have apps like Netflix on the device, but also be able to control during their working hours what they can and can't view and see. And I on one of your earlier slides, you mentioned you can set controls for certain times of day, so you could set an actual like a work time platform, I guess.
Yeah, that's entirely that, or even a geographically based platform. You know, we have had it where, for example, a device, if it's detected to go abroad, will then lock down to only business critical applications. Or as you say, if it's detected to be within, say, a work area or an out of work hours, then maybe work applications are blocked, as the case may be, because the device is detected to be at the person's home. Yes, you can absolutely change these things as you see fit.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting, because we know about in Germany, for example, they have laws that restrict their employees from working from home almost. I think there's a set amount of hours. So, you know, but no, that's great. And just going back to that data, we've just got a couple more questions. I really appreciate your time. Appreciate you both staying on. We've got a few more questions to go through. Just on data. So, is Knox able to, so if from a network level, you can have data caps and spend caps, which if you get to a certain threshold, it can alert the end user. Does Knox do anything like that? Is it able to identify that a lot of data is being used and it could end up costing the end customer money based on the bundles that they have?
You can run reports that say, show me the applications on a device and what data did it consume. It can't necessarily take proactive action for you in the event that maybe it's overspilled a consumption. It can notify you of that, but it won't take any proactive action. We're hoping that the ever-moving upwards feast of switches and buttons within Knox Manage means that we'll be able to have a value-based button to click to say, if a device hits this limit, then do something for me in the background. So we're hoping that's going to come soon. But certainly at the moment, you could run a report to say, show me the consumption of per device, what's going on, and then you can make retrospective decisions. Of course, the key thing to remember here, you're right to say about the network level stuff. Typically, network level analysis is probably at least the next day. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that tends to be the case because of billing and such like. Because this is MDM, it's mobile device management, you can interrogate a device right now. It's talking to the device live. So you could take that snapshot now if you wanted to. Moreover, those decisions around, right, I'm going to block some consumption because I think Darren's abusing it, whatever, would be taken immediately. So if Darren's got Netflix on the phone now, and I decide to block it for him, it will disappear from his phone right now. And that's the kind of instantaneous control you get.
Okay, and that leads on brilliant to the next question. In regards that level of control, so when the IT teams start coming into play and using the platform, what's like the minimum requirements and levels required and for the software to use?
Yeah, it's all cloud-based. It's all at samsungknox.com. It's all hosted by Samsung. It's all actually hosted by AWS, so it's secure, etc. If anybody's got those sorts of queries. But in terms of requirements, there is none. It's all cloud hosted, so there's no impact on customers' own servers or anything like that at all.
Okay, and with obviously within our channel, we have our partners who are supporting the end customers and managing their IT and telecoms requirements. Can our partners have access to manage the Knox solution for them if that was a requirement or an option?
I mean, yes, and then they can be a customer themselves in their own right. We would very, very much recommend people to go to samsungknox.com. They can gain a trial license initially on all of the services I've just mentioned today through all of the portals that will be available to them under the relevant buttons that are there, and we can continue to provide trial licenses thereafter as well. Moreover, though, we can provide the support levels to resellers and indeed to their customers to demonstrate, to show, and to talk them through the portals. We've very much talked holistically about this today, but sometimes these things are easier to understand when they're in light, and we're very, very happy and would welcome the opportunity to show people around the portals for themselves. One thing I would say is we also would very much encourage resellers to possibly nominate somebody within their business to become a little bit of a champion in these things. That always helps. I'm sure you do with your other solutions that you offer, and that way we can dedicate time, knowledge, and we have lots of collateral information, videos, support guides, whatever, that can help people to embrace and understand the product for themselves as much as for the customer as well.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And the trial setup sounds like something that all partners should do, and just to add that initial test of it. I think I might have worded my question not quite correctly, but what you answered was great, and that's really useful. So I'm glad you answered it. But what I was asking was, could a partner actually manage the Knox solution on behalf of their customer?
Potentially, yes. I think the simple answer is nothing stops you doing it, but I'm always give people a cautionary note at that point that if you're going to do that, you've got to be prepared to be somebody that's almost 24/7 from an MDM perspective, because inevitably people tend to lose their phones on a Sunday at 2 o'clock in the morning or something, right? And that's that sort of phone call. I've lost my phone, can you block it, please? If you're a provider that wants to provide that kind of level of service, then great, by all means. It might be there's a good halfway house, and the halfway house is to provide a value add, of course, earn for that value of initially getting the customer to understand it, to embrace it and set up, and maybe do some initial moves and changes for them. But probably at that point, maybe hand over the dashboard, because there will be those times where they just need to do the tiniest of change. Again, like I mentioned, if they're using Managed Google Play, you may not necessarily want to be receiving inbound calls continually saying, oh, we've forgotten an app, we've forgotten another app, oh, John's decided in his train line add into his solution, and so on. That can be an awful lot of calls, a lot of very, very small moves and changes. It really is up to the customer if they want to be a true MSP and managed service provider of it. Nothing stops them doing that. What I will say is that Knox Manage can be provided in a multi-tenancy environment if they want to do that for themselves, so they can see each individual tenancy and support that. That is available. There's no charge for that actually, so we could talk to resellers about that if they were geared up to manage their customers that way. But I'm just always a little bit cautious about the offering a full rounded service, Daniel, because you've got to be able to be willing to take all of those inbound calls, and sometimes the devil in the detail probably sometimes say to customers, look, it's here, it's 2 clicks and you've done it. So there's probably a good halfway house on that. Yeah,
absolutely. No, that's a great answer. Okay, look, believe it or not, this has been an hour session, and it's been driven by the amazing questions and the brilliant responses from Marios and Darren. I just want to quickly go back to this slide. So if if any of our partners want to learn more, there's two routes in there for you to do that. But what I think has actually happened over the last 5-10 minutes is Marios and Darren have put forward a lot of ideas and suggestions on potential follow-up sessions here. This is I think we should all view this as just the starter. This webinar will be repeated, and we'll get some more questions and feedback come in, and then we'll collate those, and then we'll probably tailor a follow-up session, because as I said, every time we run these, it does generate a lot of interest, because it is such a exciting product, especially now with everything that's going on with security. But but it's relevant at the moment, but it's something that has always been on the radar. And and like me personally, I want to do more to support the partners in being able to sell it. So that involves assets as well, and support for marketing and selling. So we're certainly here to do that with you. So we'll draw it to a close there. Darren, Marios, thank you so much for your time.
No, pleasure.
Welcome. No
really
problem.
Appreciate it. Data Select have been running a weekly set of webinars, and I've been on many of them, and the ones that I went on, they've all been absolutely brilliant. So I was really keen to bring you both in to talk to our partners directly, and it's been I really hope it's been a success. And I think by the number of the sort of questions we've got in, and the subject matter is definitely engaging. So thank you both for taking the time to do that, and thank you both for our partners. Thank you to all our partners for joining. And as I said, we'll certainly be in touch with a potential follow-up on this as well.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.